I will just. Okay. Hello, everyone, again. Today we are continuing now with our second session, and this session is by Walter Carnielli, and he's going to talk about the Gödel's incompleteness theorem, but in a different setting with a different logic that is not classical logic. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. So thank you, people, for inviting me to be here. Got it? Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you today is a way of revising Gödel's theorem under some other kind of more reduced and more constructive and more careful logic. And this is a work in progress, right? So it's not ready yet. So you're writing a paper. Me by my colleague David Fuenmayor from Bamberg. And the idea is to re-examine what we can do. How can we recover Gödel's theorem in light of a more careful, more constructive logic? It has some other kinds of feature, right? So let me just revise quickly. Say what the Gödel's first incompleteness theorem says.
You already begun?
Began because you read my stuff, right? You were there yesterday.
I want just to
You made a lot of requests.
change the charge of the car. 1 moment, 1 second.
I mean, it's not me. You meet it.
Hey, I just to change the car.
Anyway, I just said 2 sentences.
Okay.
I repeat for you.
It's certainly wrong, but
So there'll be sort of a revising first Gödel's first incompleteness theorem, which says the form is let be a formal theory that's effectively axiomatized, consistent. That's most important point. And what by consistent, I mean classically what people mean by consistent is non-contradictory. Exactly, non-contradictory. Why? Because to be contradictory, to be consistent, to be contradictory is to be deductively trivial. Okay. So all these concepts are the same. If you find a contradiction, that means the system is inconsistent, and immediately is deductively trivial. It derives everything because of the law of explosion. Okay. Anyway, under these conditions, then there exists a sentence GT in the language of T, such that T does not prove G, neither it proves negation of G. And then, thus, if T is consistent, T is incomplete, and there are true arithmetical statements. But this kind of Marco discussed at this point yesterday. Gödel never says about truth. It just proves his theorem syntactically. So we interpret it as being true because it's not provable. It says of itself that it's not provable. So it's a kind of a pedagogical way of understanding, kind of a conceptual way of understanding. Okay. So in that, if it's consistent, this is incomplete. That's the important point. The second Gödel incompleteness theorem said the following: if let it be a consistent, again, the same way of consistent formal theory containing basic arithmetic, some kind of a basic stuff sufficient to make it cryptographically or Gödel-likely to interpret the sense inside the system itself. Right?
sorry, can I ask?
Yes, sure.
I think you want. Can you come back?
Yes.
Because if it is consistent, it's incomplete. I suppose that the condition, if it is consistent, is there because if it were inconsistent, we can prove anything, so we can also prove GT and non-GT. But if you reject the idea that inconsistency go with explosion, that is no more the case. You can have one system in which you have a contradiction, but you have no explosion. And so it's not true that because of the presence of the contradiction, you can prove anything. And so it can be possible that you can prove neither GT, not non-GT, even if you have a contradiction in the system. It's true or not?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what you mean is that if you take exactly one logic that there's no explosion, there's no danger of triviality, okay? And if you don't know triviality, Gödel theorem loses its its contents completely. Does not even apply. But it's not that way. That's more or less obvious. That's the line of Graham Priest. He claims like that. That's what he claims. Take a weaker logic and then the effects of Gödel theorem disappear completely. Okay. But it's not that I want. I want to try to recover it. Under which conditions can I recover it? Okay. Now, second theorem says, again, consistent T be the formal system expressing there is no contradiction provable in T, then T cannot prove its own consistency, right? In other words, sufficiently strong and consistent theory cannot prove its own consistent. Moreover, if T could prove the consistent T, and by Gödel's first theorem, it will be actually being consistent. It means the following, that the second theorem is a corollary, is a consequence of the first one, and that's why some people say there exists just one Gödel theorem. A lot of people say there are two Gödel, two incompleteness theorems, right? Anyway, it's a matter of regarding if the corollary is more important than the one. Actually, the corollary is harder to prove. Corollary is harder to prove. So there is a point in considering them to be two different theorems, and our view makes them really different. They really make them to be contrastable and be completely different, right? So, what traditionally called the consistency for a classical thinker like Hilbert, Gödel, Frege, as I said, consistency was understood as in syntactical sense. A formal system is consistent if there is no formula A such that T proves A and T proves not A. If this condition fails, the system is considered broken because of the principle of explosion. Of course, if I prove T and prove not T, I can prove any other system. So I trivialize completely. I have no any more tools to distinguish what is relevant in mathematics from what is not relevant. Thus, from a contradiction, one can derive a state and B, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Then inconsistency becomes trivial. And then for Hilbert, this notion of consistency was essential for him because of the idea of existence. For him, existence, in a formalist way, existence is to be coherent, consistent. That's it. We're going to lose this idea. So now I'm going to this logic of formal inconsistent. It was a particular case of paraconsistent logic, it's a very broad family of paraconsistent logic. They encompass like all Newton da Costa's theorem, Jaskowitz theorem, many other theorems that people were working in Belgium, in Australia, in many other systems. The only one it does not encompass is this Priest's LP because it's very weak and it has no deduction theory. No deduction. So it's not contained, but this family of LFIs, as they call them, encompasses very many logics. The explosion, the idea, this very simple idea that explosion does not hold, but it will be holding. Now, do I have somewhere to show, Jose?
Sorry?
This pointer? We don't have the pointer.
We don't.
Okay.
Because actually,
people will see. If I put my finger, no, it's not going to show. Anyway,
you can use the arrow. No, the arrow, the question.
The arrow. Okay, good idea. Okay, so I mean, you just change. A and not A does not lead to an explosion, but if you have A and not A and something called the consistency of A, then you recover explosion. That's the only point you have to buy in this logic. That's the only thing you have to buy. So what does it mean, this consistency? Marco does not like it, but I like to call it regular or coherent or nice or well-behaved, whatever you want to call it. It's something that it's normal, it's regular. So apply it to regular things, to regular judgments, to regular propositions. Contradictions lead to explosion. Otherwise, they do not. Okay? So another Marco does not like that I call this little ball coherent or regular, but they need to have a name. It's nice to have a name for it. Thus, contradictions may exist without collapsing the system, but consistent contradictions are not acceptable. Okay? Then, from this point of view, classical logic becomes to be exactly kind of paraconsistent logic where everything is coherent, everything is consistent. If all my judgments are considered to be regular or coherent, I get back classical logic. So I am enlarging classical logic and not exactly making any revolution like intuitionistic logic or accepting laws. I am including logic. LFIs are well formed in the logical system. They are very well worked out. They have a proof theory. They have a algebraic semantics. They have lots of different semantics. I myself proposed was something called the possible translation semantics. It's a kind of a generalization of the crypt semantics. And now I could go the direction of the Brice and try to think about geometrize in my why not? I mean, that's a good idea. It gave me a nice idea to try to geometrize my own semantics here. Would be a nice idea. And anyway, they are representing, in my view, a kind of an enrichment of the classical logic, because you are going to be more careful and equally powerful, if you like, according in the domain of well-behaved statements. You are completely inside the classical logic. So you're not losing. It's up to you to decide which statements are coherent, normal, regular, consistent, which ones are not. That's not a task of logic, right? It's a task of philosophical analysis to tell you what kind of statements or judgments are considered to be coherent or consistent. You decide it. So if you decide you have a richer logic, that's our point. And now let's see how can I apply all this machinery to Gödel theorem. How universal is Gödel theorem? So there's lots of discussion about this. So for instance, Artemov has Sergei Artemov from New York. He has a very nice idea. He says Gödel theorem rules out only compact proofs of consistency. What's compact proof? Single finite derivation inside the system. If you go beyond this kind of simple proof, compact proof, as you say, for instance, if you take into account like infinity proof schemas, reflection principles, meta-level constructions, then according to him, you can prove the consistency of mathematics, consistent of arithmetic. Okay, if you take into account the possibility of this kind of non-compact proof. That's one criticism towards Gödel theorem. That means they are applied, and he is working in this way since a long time and very convincingly. If you take lots of attention to different kinds of proofs, you could, in principle, break the barrier of Gödel theorems and prove consistent of arithmetic. That's his point. So his method may establish the consistency of a system without contradicting Gödel theorem. Very interesting point. Other people like Zach Weber and Robert Meyer have argued that Gödel theorem display a kind of a paradoxical character. It's just kind of a trick, in a sense. And it has no really, it's just a kind of a word game. And it has no real, according to them, no real interest. It's nice, it's true, the proof is okay, but they don't mean much. They're word games.
They do not
mean. They do not mean. So, even if arithmetic were inconsistent, but a consistent logic, for instance, that's your point some moments ago, could still preserve non-trivial and meaningful mathematics.
Is the point of
exactly. That's the point of a graduate proof. So this raises, according to my view, a natural question or a Gödel conclusion dependent on the underlying logic. I think there.
The point by his point is, well, it's possible, but it's not so is not so immediate in the sense that
You yourself, you said that. When if you take a stock of a very weak paraconsistent logic, they don't even exist. They don't apply. So they're really dependent on logic you're choosing.
yes, but I want to say to conserve an interest for arithmetic, even if it were contradictory, you should, in some sense, guarantee that the relevant arithmetical statements are not contradictory. So if you have a system in which the contradictions tell us that 0 is equal 1 or 0 is different than 1, even if you have a paraconsistent logic, the system is not mathematically relevant. Interesting. So you have in any case to localize the contradiction outside the arithmetic.
That's the point of Wittgenstein. That's the point of Wittgenstein. If there's a contradiction, nobody sees it. Nobody sees it, nobody cares. There's a contradiction that will never be discovered. It's there and it's working. Who cares?
Okay, that is the point. So the contradiction is to be there.
Yeah.
Not that there's a contradiction, so I am very consistent.
Remarks on the
So of
foundation
course there is no problem. Depends on where the contradiction
That's the remarks on the foundation of mathematics. It says, why this thorn? Why are you so worried about this thorn? They are not going to kill you. So contradiction is obtained. The classical logic allows any formula to be derived. They have a simple, very simple proof here. But of course, you know it from disjunctive syllogism or syllogism. You get everything. So our goal here is to reconstruct the Gödel type of reasoning using LFIs together with some modal tools. Okay, I'll be using the Sorbris. I will be using connected modal tools, like one after the other. In the usual sense. Okay. So in classical logic, reduction ad absurdum and explosion are closely connected. That's one important point for my talk here. Why is that so? Because reduction ad absurdum, what's it? I mean, classical statements, you start with some negation, like I negate some A, and then I go and follow some mathematical path and reach a contradiction. Then I stop on the pain of a triviality, and I go to A. I started with negation of A and go to A because I reached a contradiction. And why do I stop? Because I fear contradictions. So I fear explosion. So explosion and reduction absurdum are very much connected. So, and also from a constructive viewpoint, explosion is problematic because it entails you to this kind of a jump into the dark. From nothing, out of the blue, from A and not the A, you get B. Even if B has no connection at all with the contradiction you are arriving, right? So it's kind of a leap into the nothing, in a sense, not constructive. And because, yes, please.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with the fact that reductio ad absurdum, like we don't like contradiction because it leads to explosion. I feel like I don't like contradiction because I can't think of it as true. It's not like an issue with the explosion of the contradiction. It's just that I don't know what A and not A means. Like it's something, it feels absurd to me, not that like my reason for disliking contradictions is separate from my reason.
I don't think it's a kind of light in it or not. It's a kind of recognizing the danger they have.
Yeah.
Right? They're dangerous because they destroy your reasoning system at all completely.
Yeah.
Any other like falsities are not like that. If you reach a falsity statement, it's a false statement. But a contradictory statement is a very special one. It destroys your system because it's allowed you by the constitution of the logic, classical logic, by the laws of classical logic, by the guiding principle, you are entitled to derive receipt.
I think I would dislike any false statement the same amount I would dislike a contradiction, like an A or and not A. I think if I was able to prove any false statement in my system, I would still dislike it for the fact that it was just.
The question is not whether you dislike or not dislike.
Yeah.
The question is whether it is as the effect of the strength of your system. So I think that
If you prove a
the
false
question-
statement.
Of course, if you have A and on A as a theorem is A, a theorem is on A, the statement A is not informative. Okay, and so there is a reason for disliking because I don't know whether what they as is there or not. So I have a lack of information. The problem is that this lack of information can be local, can be global. If it is local, it depends what is the content of A. If the content of A is not relevant for your purpose, you can, okay, it's not informative, but it's not a problem for me because I didn't know information about that. No problem. But if the statement, the content of A is relevant, then it is another story. So this was the point that was made in there. The point is where the contradiction is.
Okay, so again, come back to the point here. I can, because I'll show you how using this consistent operator you can restore reduction absurdum and other important point. You can restore some sequence of value here. You can restore contraposition, law of contraposition. And as Marcus pointed out yesterday, he also, which is not something which is not valid, is modus tollens. You also need modus tollens is like if P implies Q and not Q, then I get not P, right? So this, if para consistent logic, I can have this true, this true, this true, and this false. So what I need here to restore, I need to put here Q is consistent. Then I do not have it. I have it either true or false or true. Because this guy here sort of restores the will behavedness of my proposition Q. Okay? If restore locally restore, this guy has to be behaving very well. Has to be a good guy.
So in your system, if A is a theorem, and it's true that anything entails A.
If A is a theorem,
yes.
Then what?
A is a theorem. Then B entail A.
Sure.
A for any B.
Yeah, sure. You have that.
That this is a rule of your system.
Yeah.
So to have a negation to have a contradiction is exactly the same thing. You have not the fact that what you prove there is the absurd. P entail the absurd is not a particular case of P entail something that is false.
No.
Because
Absurd.
if there is a theorem, so you
Yeah,
can in any case create a
The absurd is this guy here. Absurd is this. The bottom part is this. A consistent and A and not A. This is the bottom part.
Okay.
This is my bottom part. Okay. This is very important point. This is a
Yes, but what I want to say, deriving the negation of a theorem is exactly equivalent to negate at the bottom.
Yeah.
Because you have B entails C.
Okay. So theorems are remain theorems. Proofs remain proofs. So Gödel does not apply to all theories, as you know, of course. Some theories are, because they are weak enough, they don't are even under the scope of Gödel theorem. You need, that's obvious for anyone. I think you need to have some kind of arithmetic on it. They don't apply to everything, but the important point for me is the point here. So in classical logic, consistent is the same as non-contradiction, and non-contradiction is the same as non-triviality. Because inconsistent means contradictory and being trivial. So the three concepts are the same, and in my setup here, they are going to be differentiated. They're going to be different. Okay, so consistent formally defined. What is it? Consistent. If I have any system, any one system you like that is Tarkian, finitary and structural logic defined over a certain signature, with negation and a consistent operator. This operator can be primitive or defined in certain three-valued logics. Things are simplified because this inconsistence means A and not A, and then consistent means the negation of A and not A, where this is a weak negation or a careful negation or a consistent negation in certain ones, but not necessarily. So the consistent operator can be defined in certain systems or can be primitive in a system. The axiomatic of this small animal here is the following. From phi and not phi, I do not derive psi for some phi and psi. They are not trivial, at least for someone. From consistent phi and not phi, I do derive every possible phi. And also, to make it non-trivial, there exist formulas alpha and beta, such that at least consistent alpha and U alpha does not entail beta, and consistent alpha and not a negation of alpha does not entail beta. That means exactly that this axiom will guarantee that this is this little operator here is relevant. It's not innocuous. Not to be innocuous. Right? So consistent becomes local and graded rather than global and absolute. And consistent, if you read it as regularity, more or less, then inconsistent will be irregularity with incompatible contradictions. Now, contradictions are just a special case of this inconsistent, for instance. So I'll show you formally in a moment, but just to give an idea, if I have here the incoherent, inconsistent, or irregular, just to know, black ball of A is negation of white ball. So this is consistent, this is inconsistent. Inconsistent things encompass the contradictory thing, but they not coincide. Why? The intuition is that to be irregular, incoherent, is a wider phenomenon than just being just contradictory. Contradictory, a kind of a symbol-pointed phenomenon. You need a conjunction, you need a negation, but in certain cases you have incoherency without negation, without conjunction. You have I'd like to give you some example of an orchestra that's not well tuned, is incoherent, for instance, or colors that don't match, or something like that. That you intuitively, in our way, in our human way of thinking, we think, okay, this is incoherent, this is not matching well, but there's no contradiction inside it.
Like Italy plays soccer.
Play soccer?
Italy plays soccer, exactly.
It's incoherent, is it? Well, but it wins, right? It works. Okay. So the condition one, as I said in the previous slide, the condition one means the failure of the classical principle of explosion. Condition two, when I add this consistent sign here, means I get something I call gentle explosion. It's a kind of explosion more wider in a sense. And then condition three, they prevent this symbols from being satisfied trivially, right? So LFIs allow contradiction, in a sense, just to sum up, allow contradictions, but keep the logic non-trivial and controlled. Okay, now let's go to the first basic logic where I'm going to construct the Gödel theorem. So this MBC is just MBC, which is basic logic. Is just a logic which contains all positive logic, which connectives, conjunction, disjunction, duplication, modus ponens, as the inference rule. And the language then is extended with this consist operator. Okay, this consist operator extends the language, and then besides that, I add the exclude the middle. I could not. I could take it off, but I don't have any need to discharge this excluded middle at this point because it does not going to interfere, right? It's non-constructive, if you like, in a completely different way, not in a way I'm talking about. But if you can delete it, it's not like to be
In this logic, you can set excluded middle and reject double elimination, double negation.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
The two are not,
Yeah.
they do not go together.
No. They can be some logics you can put them together. In someone, you just have to find the models to make them true or to find a completeness theorem. You may. There's lots of freedom. So in a certain sense, that's paraconsistency can be like the opposite side or dual of intuitionistic logic from a certain point of view, but not for all points of view. There are several ways of being non-constructive. That's the point.
When you say that contradiction may occur, do you mean that they may be theorems, or how?
No, they may be satisfiable
May satisfiable
in a model.
in a model.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they cannot be theorem.
Okay. I thought that this was just the syntax, but okay. You also have models on top of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm taking positive logic and just adding this excluding middle, tertiary non-datur, and this thing here, which is exactly the gentle explosion, written on different way.
So the reason for which it cannot be a contradiction, a theorem as a contradiction, is because you have no theorem that has a contradiction.
Yeah, I don't have any theorem which says
You have no axiom that is a contradiction.
No.
Your rule of inference cannot produce contradiction starting from non-contradiction.
yes.
So you cannot have a theorem. So the inference rules are sound.
Yeah, the only statement that they are consistent is itself. Consistent of consistence is a theorem. The only concept that's consistent is one. Any other thing you have to buy from abroad. You have to import into your logic. So no statement are going to be consistent by God's sake. Right? Yes.
Maybe you're about to say this, but how are we going to go through a Gödel theorem? Or are there quantifiers involved in this logic?
No, I don't need quantifier here. I don't need I can put quantifiers. It's quantifiable, yes, but for a moment, for my analysis of Gödel theorems, I don't need quantifier. Because why I don't need quantifiers? Because all this part of a diagonalization, I'm going to take for sure. Because I'll explain this in a moment. Diagonalization, the parts that involve like a more complicated in a sense, Gödel coding. Okay, they are combinatorial theorems. They really do not depend on logic.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding what's happening now.
Let me go to the end and then we discuss. Okay. Anyway, I'm just repeating the same story. I only add this thing here. I only add this principle of a gentle explosion to my loss. That's all I need. That's all I need. Consistent, I said, it can be primitive, blah, blah, blah. This kind of machinery allows of finding control of the notion of consistent. And then I have here a strong negation. If I say something like A implies bottom, like an intuitionistic negation, then I define a kind of a stronger negation, or strong negation. And this strong negation recovers classical logic completely. Okay, so in the sense, Valeria mentioned that point some days ago. Say that one logic is weaker or stronger than the other is just a matter of a point of view, because this logic is in principle weaker than classical logic, because I'm deleting some principles. But because I have enough expressive power, I restore classical logic. So it's weaker and stronger, same sense. And so what? No problem, right? And contradiction becomes an object.
That's the clarification question. On the previous.
Sure, yeah.
Can you go to the previous slide?
Previous
One slide.
slide.
So bottom is not part of your language, right?
Bottom is part of my language.
Oh.
Yes. Bottom is defined exactly like that. If I have any formula, A is consistent and not A, and A, so a contradiction plus consistent is precisely bottom.
But that's just a definition, so it's not in the
It's not a
signature.
primitive side.
Yeah, it's not in the signature of your language.
No, it's not any, I mean, just a definition, it works well. You can prove that it works like a
But
bottom.
all of them are interdefinable.
Right. And so then the stronger negation, so you also define that.
Yeah, strong negation. Strong negation is like that. A implies this bottom. It implies the bottom. So I recover classical logic. Now, contradiction and reduction absurdum are crucial in classical proofs of Gödel theory. My way of going to prove it. They are not valid in MBC. These very crucial tools for proving Gödel theorems are not valid in my logic. So how can I make them valid? No, they become valid only under an explicitly consistent assumption, with consistent assumption. When, for instance, consistency beta is assumed. So, for instance, if I have alpha implies beta, it does not entail not beta implies not alpha. Right? But if I have alpha implies beta and beta is consistent, then I recover contraposition law. Okay? And the same again here. If I have, what do I have here? Yes. I mean, from not A, you get A. I mean, this kind of reduction ad absurdum here. From not A, I don't. If I better write this. From not A, B, and not B, I don't derive A. I mean, like in the classical case, if I started from A, arrive at this contradiction, then I reduce ad absurdum entails A. My case, I need this consistent B and not B, then I get A. So I need to be sure that this guy is a bottom particle. Okay. Again, making this point clear, I recover the two important laws, important tools, reduction ad absurdum and contraposition, if I add this kind of local consistent. So in this case, then this MBC introduces a structure of symmetry between contradiction and inconsistency. As I said, I made this little ball, this little draw months ago. For instance, first one here. From a contradiction, I get not inconsistent, exactly, not consistent, inconsistent. From a contradiction, I entail inconsistent, but from inconsistent, I do not entail contradiction. Inconsistent are bigger, larger. From consistent, I entail that guy, this formula here, is not contradictory, is not any contradiction. But if this is a contradiction, I do not entail it's consistent. Okay? Non-contradiction is not sufficient to entitle the notion of consistent. Consistency is bigger. That's right. That's it. Consistency is a bigger phenomenon. In certain logic, is like if I define things in a different way, I can put them together again. In tree-valued, for instance, in a tree-valued paraconsistent logic, they will be coincide. Now, the logic MBC is complicated because it does not satisfy the replacement theorem. Right? So what does it mean? If alpha and beta are equivalent, their negations are not equivalent. And if they're, again, if their alpha and beta are equivalent, their consistency is not equivalent. The relative consistent statements is not obtained. So this makes this logic complicated because then they are not algebraizable. Cannot algebraize it. And then we discover a kind of extension named RMBC when I add these two rules here. But it's not so simple just to add the rules because you have to discover models for it. And we really work with, I mean, was a kind of a nice work. We even used a proof assistant, Isabel, to find proofs and counterproofs. So we finally found a system which is an extension of MBC, which is this R rules, which is this algebraizable. And then this is a nice system to work with. So this becomes algebraizable, and this allows formal combination with the algebraizable logic. That's an important point here. If I have an algebraizable logic using our work on fibrin, combining logics, if I have another algebraizable logic like a modal logic S4, I can formally combine them, and I can preserve completeness. And I preserve a series of other features because they are both algebraizable. I use the tools. I mean, just to let you know that I will be then composing my logic, my now algebraizable, consistent logic with modal logic is to get a environment where I can treat Gödel proofs. Now, let's go back to diagonalization here. Let be a formal system capable of expressing basic arithmetic or string manipulation. Then for any, I can prove the following diagonalization theorem. For any formula P of y, with only free variable y, there exists one sentence G such that this system proves G is equivalent to P of G. So where I can, G is this square brackets inside of G are the Gödel code, the name for in a sense. So for any property P, there exists a sentence G that informally understand that says of itself that it has the property P. In other words, the system can construct self-referential sentences. And this is a combinatorial theorem. I'm going to assume it because it can be, there are several proofs of this diagonalization by Schmid, by Bulus, even by Lovier, using category theory. So this is a very basic combinatorial property of a formal language. It does not really depend on connectives, does not depend on quantifiers. And it depends on properties of formal language, right? It's a fixed point or diagonalization lemma. I can assume it. I can start from it because they're, in other words, changing a logic is not going to interfere with diagonalization, with fixed point. So I can assume it. Trying to be valid for any kind of logical modification.
Sorry, can you go back to the statement of the Fixed-point theorem then?
Which one?
The slide before.
This?
Yeah, this one. Because, so what does a formal system mean then? Because I assumed it was like a classical theory, a classical positive theory, but if that's not the case, then you need to say what a formal system is and what proof.
Formal system does not include necessarily propositions or connectives. You can work in like a machine that makes like this famous me problem. I mean, the workers with strings. They have rules for managing, for handling strings, for instance, with certain rules, like a formal language, formal computer language, automata, for instance, or like that.
But you are speaking about something that is able to express basic arithmetic. So what is it if it is not a language?
It's not exactly basic
Quantifiers.
just part of it.
Or
Just
part of it.
Manipulation of strings.
What does it mean?
Manipulating finite strings.
What does it mean? So, for example, a basic part of arithmetic is that every even number is a multiple of I don't know.
Of two.
Yeah, but then that's by definition. But I don't know. Every number congruent with one modulo of 4 satisfies a certain property. Like, so how do we express this? It's a basic. How I express that with a string.
Well, if you just open a Smolyan book and if first page number 5, it gives a proof of the absolutely there is nothing. It gives a proof of diagonalization using just properties of strings.
You mean Gödel in his Gödel in his paper or
No, Smolyan.
Look about Gödel's completeness theorem.
okay.
Gödel's incomplete.
But
It was
the
a point.
the point is not whether the diagonalization theorem require a language of a certain sort. The point that is pointing is another one. What does it mean for a system that does not include a sufficiently rich language able to express basically? This is the point.
Yes,
What does it mean that a system without a good language can express basic arithmetic?
Yeah, for example, you're speaking here about a formula that has a free variable. What does it mean to have a free variable?
I have to go back to his proof.
Okay.
I'm just buying his proof here because what I know for sure, it does not depend on the machinery I am criticizing here.
Okay.
Does not depend on reduction absurdum, does not depend on contraposition,
But
on negation.
in the system, you have a Gödelization. So what about an oracle that declare the number of arithmetical theorem? Simply 7. And this is the number of a sentence, but the sentence is a theorem of arithmetic. So the oracle can only say numbers that correspond to theorem of arithmetics. So you need no language, you simply need a language that has all the natural number as atomic symbol, basically.
I don't know how to reason about oracles.
But I don't know.
That's why I thought we might need quantifiers, because there wouldn't be a good way to make the logic
Yeah.
contain a theorem of arithmetic without a quantifier.
That's one way to do it, but not necessarily. I mean, there's other ways. There are other ways. If you go and see the classical proofs, I checked them and I saw that they don't need any kind of negation. They don't need any kind of implication. They don't need any kind of contraposition. They don't need any kind of reduction absurdum. At least
to have a variable.
they don't need it since I'm starting here.
You're substituting something. You
Yeah.
have P of
Yeah.
Y. So at least you have a theory of substitution.
Yeah, sure.
If you don't have
Yeah,
quantifiers,
yeah.
you at least have substitution.
Yes. String manipulation. What kind of string manipulation? Concatenation and self-reference. Concatenation, that's what I mean, right? Concatenation, it's a combinatorial thing. Any case, if you go to this, the book by Smolyan, for instance, or Bulus, you see that they are very basic. So Smolyan could have stopped his book in page 7. So he's not okay. I said, wow, but this does not mean much. To have a fixed point is just part of the proof of Gödel's theorem. Just it's not a good proof. Now, if I start from this fixed point and I choose the property P not to have a proof, not to be provable, where proof, like the Beweis from Gödel, means it's provable in T, the fixed point theorem gives me a sentence G such that G is equivalent to say, I do not prove the name of G, the code of G. I do not prove the name, the code of G. So I'm starting from this thing here. Okay. So G says, applying this fixed point theorem, I'm not provable. Okay. Suppose it were provable, then would prove and would hold, but G asserts itself does not prove. This produces a contradiction, and then G is really not provable. This is really not provable. If I start from this theorem, I see that G is not really provable. Okay, There are one sentence. Okay, let me go forward and try to show you what I have in mind. So, Gödel's theorem depends on reduction, ergo on explosion, right? So, if B entails A and not A, then not B. This is this reduction absurdum. In this specific case, if it starting from a proof of G entails G and not G, then I get not provable G. Huh? That's the way it uses reduction absurdum. Okay? But what if the theory is based on a logic that does not validate explosion? Do like paraconsist, like my logic here, do Gödel incompleteness theorem is still hold? Answer is yes, under certain conditions. I try to show you what conditions are. So even in more restrictive paraconsistent logics, if the system contains local notion of consistency, my little ball here, my white ball, Gödel's tie completely reason can still be obtained. So let's go to probability logic and to like attaching modal logic to my RMBC. So because of this fiber phenomenon, I can, with not much trouble, make them together or extend this logic with a modal version.
So in order to give sense to Gödel theorem, or possibly not to Gödel theorem, but to the proof of Gödel theorem, at least you need a Gödelization. Okay, so you need arithmetic within your system. Okay, so what happens if a theorem of arithmetic is not consistent?
Well, I'll arrive at this point. So I need to at least guarantee that some parts of arithmetic are consistent.
And the theorem that is part of arithmetic should be non-contradictory.
Look, it's because there are two ways of arriving at Gödel theorem. One way is, as Gödel did, by examining carefully all the arithmetic behind it. The other way is by doing a modal version. It's a kind of abstract way of moving. But from this abstract way, I do not need to be concerned with problems of arithmetic being completely incoherent or not. Because I have my fixed point theorem. I start from my fixed point theorem.
I want to say, in order to Gödelize, you have to say to this sentence corresponds to this number. And to establish that is this number that corresponds to this sentence, you need to make some arithmetic calculation. If these arithmetic calculations are not warranted, then, for example, this arithmetic calculation requires 3 plus 5 equal 8, but you have the 3 plus 5 equal 8 is not consistent, so you do not have a Gödel number.
Right.
And in one of you can have 2, 3. So what does it mean to Gödelize?
Yeah, if I am under this circumstance, I'm done. I mean, I don't go anywhere. No Gödel, no theorem. So I'm trying to see what do I have to recover it. Okay. Otherwise, I stop there. Yes, please.
Are we saying that like our system itself is classical, but our meta theory is this paraconsistent logic? Is that
I don't say the system is classical. The system can be contradictory in a certain sense, but I at least need to. So I mean, if everything is contradictory, then if the arithmetic is completely crazy, then there's no point in proving any theorem about arithmetic, right?
Yeah.
There's no point. So I need to start from the following assumptions. It's sufficiently coherent so that I can have something. But even so, I don't get it.
My point is it should be, if possibly not, but if I understand well, it should be sufficiently coherent to guarantee the possibility of a non-ambiguous Gödelization, or not.
Yes, at least. At least. I mean, I have to start from the. No, it's not that I have to. I am starting from the following point of view. If it's completely crazy, it's completely crazy. No Gödel, nothing to do, no philosophy of mathematics anymore, right? But if it's not completely crazy, if it's sufficiently well behaved so that I can have some kind of coding, Gödel coding, Gödelization, and I get my fixed point theorem. But even if I guarantee that I have this minimum, the Gödel theorem does not apply because the logic requires something that I don't have. And I'm trying still to fix it a little bit. To fix my logic, minimally, to see what I have. So I'm making a kind of a very fine analysis of the Gödel reasoning in a possible sense.
So imagine that you have a first order logic, and then you can see still these first order formulas as propositional formulas by saying wherever I have a formula that contains a quantifier, I'm considering all this formula as one proposition. I don't analyze what happened inside. So for example, the formula P and not P, so X and not X, this will be, you have two subformulas, X and not X, but if you write for all X and not X, this is one proposition, you do not enter into analyze that. So you can see that as your propositions of, so in your first order language, you can see those subformulas as propositions. And then you can impose in this first order language just this logic, this propositional logic. And then you have to say also what happens with the quantifiers on top independently. So it's possible that this is what it means, but this would be just my best attempt to interpret what's going on.
Still lift stuff, though, right?
Excuse me?
From an induction axiom, you could lift the level and get like the contradictions all the way up.
Yeah, I don't know what.
I don't know how much induction I need for that. I don't know how much induction I need for that.
You have a fixed point theorem, so you
Yeah.
have induction happening somewhere.
I mean,
Yeah,
primitive recursive, at least, right? The proof requires this Chinese remainder theorem. Primitive recursive, I guess. Minimum.
primitive recursive arithmetic, the low-level formulas are the intersection of hiding arithmetic and piano arithmetic. Like that level gives you enough to like recover excluded middle at least, because from that amount of induction. So I guess I'd worry that it would give you enough to recover stuff to get you to classical.
You know, even Rob's arithmetic is prone to get to this incompleteness, right?
Yeah.
It's very weak. No, I'm starting. Otherwise, I can go.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll be interpreting this square of alpha is provable, alpha, and I don't know. Really, Mauricio made me. You put me some flies in my mind. I don't know how could I, from your point of view, interpret now provability, right? You have an idea like that?
As this operator in general, everything depends on the axioms that you
Yeah.
have.
It's
axiom.
S4.
Yeah.
Oh, K4, not S4, K4. Anyway, that's another point. I'll just go with. I'm just curious to know. Okay, so arithmetic. What do I need here to go from arithmetic to probability logic? I need three basic points. Necessitation rule. If A is provable, then I prove that A is formally provable. Okay, necessitation rule. In probability terms, this is the first Hilbert-Bernays-Lund condition. If the alpha theorem is provability, its predicate of a probability is alpha theorem. Probability becomes a predicate. K, if I prove that A, that's a theorem, right? If I have a proof that A implies beta, this implies that you have a proof of alpha, I have a proof of beta. Well, this is K applied in probability, second Hilbert-Bernays-Lund condition, beautiful conditions. But the system proves an implication, and then see then, it proves the consequent, and action 4. Third condition, if system proves alpha, it proves that it proves alpha. is reflexive. No, your criticism start here, but I don't go to that, right? I don't go into this point. I'm following the tradition, but I could go. Anyway, this is the basic probability conditions.
You can construct the dual of the box with negation.
Yes.
Box norm.
Yes, because I have strong negation. I have this. I have this.
So you have also
here.
diamond there.
Box. Yeah. I can do diamond. Yes. And then Loeb's axiom, which is fantastic axiom in my opinion. It's a kind of magic, right? Kind of magic. It says the following. It's a theorem. If I prove that I prove alpha implies alpha, then I have a proof of alpha. I have an understanding here, as I said yesterday, like if you can argue that your proof of A really implies that A is true, then this is a proof. You have an argument. If I have any kind of beautiful argument that says my proof of A implies that the A is true. If I stop this argument here, this is a proof of A. This is very deep, almost magic, right? But it's very useful here, right? This is you get this Loeb's condition on top of a K4, and then you have a completely simple but very deep logic of proof. Now I constructed my joint system, RMBC joined or connected, combined with K. Just K. So what I'm doing here, I'm merging this LFI, the logical formula consistent with modal logic. As I said, I have some tools for doing that, the fiber tools. That's how in our book, we wrote a complete book in this kind of
K, the theorems, what is K?
K, the first axiom K.
The axiom.
Axiom K, yes. This algebraic fibering preserves inference, extendable to K4 and to G well. I can put RMBC combined with K, axiom K, or K4, or the whole GL, which is K neck necessitation for K and Loeb's axiom. In principle, I have a proficient mathematics to do that. Now let's go to G1, a paraconsistent version of Gödel's first incompleteness theorem. Assuming that F is a non-trivial, look, I'm not assuming that's non-contradictory. I only assume that's a non-trivial. It can't have a contradiction. Why? I mean, because my logic is, it supports contradiction. It is strong enough to bear contradiction, right? So I just need to assume that F is a non-trivial formal system whose underlying logic is RMBC. So there has no global explosion. Assuming further that F contains piano arithmetic.
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
It contains induction axiom.
Okay, so that's the first little language then.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why now I'll be applying my Gödel theorem on top of my formal system that contains arithmetic.
So that's
not contain arithmetic, it has no
You
power.
don't need the pan arithmetic. Robinson arithmetic is enough of the Gödel theorem.
Yeah, but I want to prove, okay, will be, but or by the dialectic interpretation, the intuition is going to do. But I'm playing with it. That's okay. Okay. I'm playing, I could simplify it.
just going back to the question from before. So now we're thinking about RMBC with quantifiers, and then the first little language in that.
Yeah, I mean, now I have a formal system with induction, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to make a kind of a meta proof of Gödel theorem on top of the system. Okay. So, assuming that it contains piano arithmetic, let GF be by using the diagonalization lemma. B, I'm proving F. GF is equivalent to I do not prove the formula whose name is GF, or in modal terms, what I have here in modal terms, translating this line here into modal terms, I have that GF is equivalent to not provable GF. Not provable GF. Then the following results hold. First, this sentence GF really exists. There existence limit, right? Second, if I have that this formula, at least this formula is coherent, is consistent, and the negation of it is also consistent, then I prove, then I get a theorem. Then I prove that it's not provable. That I cannot prove it. Third point, again, under the condition that I have a GF is consistent, and this an additional premise, I prove that I cannot get the proof of negation of stuff. So I recover first again the theorem again. In purely syntactical terms, without talking about true or false, right?
But sorry, when result 1, GF exists. The proof is you with a GF, or you prove that it needed to
Diagonalization.
it needed to exist. You do not know what it is.
It's a diagonalization name, existential.
Okay.
It completely existential.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, hidden. Let me see. There's some hidden structural dependencies here that I'm going to show you. So recall that since a classical proof is rely on contraposition and global reduction, depending on the law of explosion, the traditional proofs of the incompleteness will not obtain, or at least in any obvious way, in my logic. So, however, these proofs can be recovered if you make explicit price to pay. What's the price to pay? Key idea. Gödel theorems and LFI require the acceptance of the following local consistent assumptions. The formula, Gödel formula itself, the distinctive formula, is itself consistent. The provability of this thing here is consistent, and the probability of a bottom is consistent. That's the minimum I need to recover proofs. Right? Now let's catch the proof assuming local consistent.
Which come back a little bit.
Yes.
Which from the fact that you do not know what the GF, so you are supposing.
I have an existential object. I just suppose it.
So that you have something that is GF and that is a consistent.
It's like an existential, like a solution of a general solution of differential
Yes,
equations.
what is relevant that when
I
Gödel proved the Gödel theorem, what he wanted to prove was to construct a very particular G. So the point of Gödel was not to use the normalization. The point of Gödel was to construct a sentence that is.
You are playing intuitionistic guy.
Sorry?
Right. You are playing intuitionistic guy.
I am not playing. I think that intrinsic to Gödel proof the idea that the proof is constructive, and this is what the proof, because if the proof is not consistent, it depends of a certain system, and then what the system can be consistent or not consistent, so the post we come back up to infinite. So the idea of Gödel is that to say, okay, I don't care that. I show you. I take my system of Gödelization.
It does not show you.
Recursive function, and I construct the G.
It doesn't show you. It does not show you. The first guy who gave a concrete example was Parallel and Harrington. They give a combinatorial example.
For example, you can make this a G
Because
based
again,
on an example. But here you have not a concrete G. You have what you prove within by the organization that there is a G.
But this is mathematics. Like I proved that the theorem of existence and the uniqueness of a solution of the system of differential equations. There is one solution. That's important for me mathematically. I get the solution and I play with it.
But can you construct the formula?
Yes, that's what I say.
Valeria's, what is Valeria's comment up here? This might be relevant. Valeria is saying something.
You cannot assume this, can you?
You cannot
something
assume-
earlier.
Already said something before, so
You
should.
said something before.
Ah,
Yeah.
you cannot assume-
Who said that?
Valeria, you want to speak up?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh,
Oh, Valeria, hi.
Hi. Hi, Walter. I'm having a problem with this last formula that you're trying to assume as like your key idea. Because from what I understand of what you're saying, that last formula means it's consistent, that falsum is provable. And this is something very strange to assume, isn't it? I mean, isn't that what I'm just reading? Circle means it's consistent. Box means it's
yes.
provable. And falsum, bottom is falsum. So
Yeah.
how can I can I accept that as a key idea?
Well, I give you an argument. Valeria. Suppose someone finds a proof of a contradiction in classical arithmetic. Suppose I can find that, let's say, Goldbach conjecture leads to a contradiction.
Mm.
And suppose you tell me I don't believe in this. I don't believe in this proof. It's not coherent. I don't believe. So I have to suppose that my proof of a contradiction is coherent, is consistent. Otherwise, any proof of a contradiction will be irrelevant.
But Walter, I mean, it is kind of really difficult because the meaning of falsum is that it cannot be provable.
By your classical standards, not by mine.
I think
I
Valeria,
don't have power enough to say that. You are mounted in classical logic. I am not.
I think
Okay.
Valeria, that this to read this bullet as
I think that the first time
it
that
is
someone said to
consistent,
Valeria that she is not a
is
classical
not
law.
Like a
part of
horse.
good reading.
Right.
Jose.
But you're writing classical
Go,
logic.
go.
I'm sorry, can I hear what Jose is saying? I couldn't he couldn't
Yes,
finish
I
the
think
sentence.
that yes, I think that to read a bullet A as A is consistent is not a good reading. I think that we should read the bullet A as A is one of those formulas so that if you assert A and not A, you are going to get a contradiction.
Hey,
This is
that's
exactly what I
what,
said yesterday.
So it is not
It's exactly
that
my
A
point
is
of view.
yeah.
But it is A is one of those formulas so that if you assume
Yeah.
A and not A, you're going to get a
But then someone can challenge you. Can you
Right,
explain?
but then I have another problem with that, Walter.
Okay.
I mean, thanks, Jose. That was very, very helpful to understand what Walter is saying. But I have a problem with that because I think, to read the circle as either is consistent or A and not A is one of the formulas that is not acceptable.
Yeah.
A and not A proves falsum is
Yeah.
acceptable. This is mixing up levels, right? I'm sure you've had this objection before. This circle is not a piece of syntax that I normally can cope with. It's a piece of syntax that is mixing the level of the language with a meta level, which is you and me reasoning about the language. Is it not?
Well, that happens with many other logical operators. So denial in human language is kind of a mathematical thing that you internalize in your logic, right? So logic is something where you internalize some objects. I am internalizing this notion of well-behavedness, if you like, to call it this way, or this kind of thing, if you don't want to give it a name, that I'm internalizing the language. I'm not mixing. This my bullet is internal in my language. It's operator. It has rules. It's governed by rules, by logical rules.
Yeah, for example, the being provable is something that through this mechanism of Gödelization can be internalized.
Yeah.
But we do not see here what is the mechanism to internalize this bullet.
It's our
Yes,
born internalized.
The white bullet.
Yes.
Bullet was born internalized, like negation.
It seems that it was internalized by
What?
some means, but we do not know how.
Yeah, you didn't spell out how you do it, so it's confusing.
Well, okay. Why you do not object against negation? It's the same as negation, the same status. Ontological status as negation is a one object. It's a unary operator because you are used to have just one. I have two. I know it's hard to
It's not the same to
be converted.
when I say my car is not black. I'm not saying anything about the statement my car is black. I'm saying something about the car. My car is not black. So negation is not speaking about the language. Negation is speaking about the world at the same level that the sentence "my car is black" is talking about the
I
world.
don't see the difference. You can say it's coherent to say it's regular to say that my car is black. It's really black.
So this is speaking about the sentence, but negating a sentence is not necessarily speaking about the sentence that is negating. It's still speaking about the world. So that's why I see that.
I mean, to be coherent, to be speaking about the world. So I don't see the difference. Maybe okay. I don't see the point here. See, it's just a kind of psychological concept in your mind. Sorry. Anyway, Valeria, let me try to explain again. This bullet provable. I mean, if my proof of a contradiction is not trustable, if I don't trust it, then there's no point in being a word about a Gödel theorem or find a contradiction or arithmetic, because any proof that someone will find is not trustable. So I have to guarantee that at least one proof of this contradiction is trustable or regular or coherent or good, well-behaved, whatever you want to call it.
But then falsum, bottom is not falsum. That's what you're saying.
Bottom is falsum, yes. Bottom is falsum, but I mean.
And when I apply the box to it, I mean.
I'm talking about probability of the falsum.
Right. So it's the box of the bottom that you say it does not
Exactly.
mean.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't quite understand, but let's let you carry on. Sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt.
Otherwise I don't finish. So okay, we now sketch a proof of existence is basically. I go quickly because I'm running out of time. Existence is based on a diagonal fixed the point lemma. So existence is okay. It's a mathematical thing. Many things in mathematics are existential, right? That's why Brouwer objected against classical mathematics. Probability of GF, non-probability of GF. Now suppose that GF is provable of F. Suppose it's provable. By necessitation, we obtain that it's square G is also provable. Necessitation. Since GF satisfies the fixed point lemma, then GF is equivalent to not square GF, starting from my fixed point lemma. Now, by reason of via contradiction here.
Contraposition.
Why? So sorry, contraposition. Contraposition is not valid, but under the premise that this guy here, the probability of G is well behaved, the proof of the consistency of G holds, then I can apply contraposition. Then, from this G is, the proof of G is acceptable, is regular. G is provable. And this guy here, I derive a contradiction. From this contradiction, now I apply reduction absurdum, and because I have this premise here, and I obtain G is not provable. So the premise is at least assuming that these three things here, square G is consistent, G is consistent, at least these two things here, I recover the first Gödel theorem. So what does it mean? This means that under certain minimal local assumptions, I recover Gödel theorem. I am defending Gödel because Gödel thought that these theorems were to be universal and as constructive as possible. And now I'm helping Gödel because I'm making this theorem obtainable again. I'm getting it again. And I'm being less non-constructive. Why? Because I am dropping out this law of explosion. Right? At the price of accepting this bullet, the properties of a bullet. Okay, you may don't like it, you may not accept it, but this is a mathematical truth. I have a proof. Under certain logics, under certain circumstances that other people do. I mean, modal logic, probability logic.
Walter,
So, sorry,
go back one slide.
here?
Yeah.
One more.
So those two premises are crucial for the theorem. Okay.
Yeah.
GF was produced by some diagonalization.
Non-constructive diagonal, yeah.
But again, Gödel actually produced an actual formula, an actual theorem, an actual sentence. Either way, how do you know that that thing that you just produced by this magical process satisfies circle box GF and circle GF?
I don't know, I suppose it.
Yeah, that's one thing. Another thing
I
is that
suppose it.
So then you don't really have a theorem.
another thing is that in the proof of this lemma, you might be using classical logic.
Yeah.
One way of doing that is reconstructing everything from scratch,
Yes,
right?
that's
Everything
be
from
done.
scratch. But I'm not taking this enterprise.
Okay.
This is kind of a next century enterprise, right? Because nobody did that.
No.
Nobody could do that.
No, my point is more direct. You have a process by which you produce, you say GF exists.
Mhm.
I'll grant you that. Somehow it exists.
Mhm.
How do you now assert circle box GF and circle GF? The two
If it
premises,
exists, it has that,
the
no?
two premises of your theorem.
Think about this mathematical object that I have some solution of a certain system. I know I have it. And I give a name to it. And I am supposing that they are well behaved. And I can
So-
prove that they are well behaved.
Okay, so your theorem is that if circle box GF and circle GF are theorems, then Gödel's theorems.
Yeah. Okay. That's a way of
That's
trying
asking me
recover
to,
it.
that's asking me to believe an awful lot since you gave this as a non-constructive proof.
That's
Why should I believe something that was produced non-constructively
Why
has
do you
the circle property?
Why do you believe in Gödel's proof?
Hmm?
Why do you believe in the proof of Gödel itself?
Because I saw.
Because he wrote a theorem.
I see the system.
But mathematics can make
That's the
consistent.
point. Because I see that
Because I could do the
You see,
arithmetic.
you see, but he himself said that arithmetic can be inconsistent, incoherent, contradictory. And you don't know. It's a matter of faith.
If mathematics is inconsistent, still Gödel theorem is correct.
Right.
Because everything is correct.
Yeah, just trivial.
Because of explosion.
It's just trivial.
because you're short. You do not
Just
have it.
trivial. Well, but it's just trivial. Are you happy with triviality? To have everything is a theorem in your life?
I
Okay.
mean, I wouldn't like it, but if it is what it is, I cannot change it.
And there's no point in doing mathematics anymore because everything will be, every stupid thing will be theorem.
Just a couple of things.
Yeah, but I think that
No,
Drew has a
no,
point.
go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things to say about Drew's question. So, I mean, first of all, I think this lemma, this diagonalization lemma, is the way you prove it is through some sort of interpretation of Q or something like this, and it's an effective translation.
Yeah.
Then you could extract, just like in Gödel's proof, right? So you could extract the actual sentence out of the
Yes.
diagonal property. So that would solve this sort of issue.
If that sentence that you extract has a proof of circle box.
Yeah, so that's the second thing. I think also, I mean, typically in the sort of probability logic literature, they don't use the diagonalization theorem on just the probability predicate, but on variations of it that include extra property. So you could have something, maybe you could have something like looking at the property of being equivalent to you're not provable, and also it's provable that you satisfy that your circle formula, etc. If you do this, then I don't know if that would work, right? But if you can find a predicate like this, then he would basically be able to remove these premises, right? Because it would come out of the diagonalization procedure.
Yeah, that I
The
could,
formula that you get.
that I could see is
So my-
possible to do. I
My
mean, that's
concern
a lot.
using that then inside, like, because the diagonalization, you have to have the formula as a formula inside your theory. So the circle box, this is part of the modal stuff outside. So I'm not sure.
I know, I don't think
No,
so,
that's
right?
part of his language.
Yeah.
The circle is part of his language.
It's part of language, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, you can accept the Graham Priest position and say, don't care. Forget about the Gödel theorem. Take my logic, which is his logic LP, very simple but consistent logic. Don't care. Keep going. That's one philosophical position. I'm assuming another philosophical position. I'm trying to recover it to see what kind of course you can criticize my assumptions. Obviously you can. And then it's nice that you criticize, but that's one way of recovering. The only way I know. If I want to recover, and I want, unless you made me resign from this.
No, I think I think part of
I am not.
I think part of the difficulty here is that we haven't seen a proof theory for circle. We don't know how it behaves. You've said, okay, what does it mean?
Ah, yeah, yeah.
But
I don't have
what I
time
mean,
to
so
show you.
I would like a model theory or a proof theory for your actual logic. And I know you have it. It's just that
I know. I don't have time to show you.
yeah.
Of course, what's missing here? What's missing here is one modal interpretation of the bullet. Should have understood. We have one possible modal, but we don't need to play with it for the moment. But we do have one, which is going to make things even more strange. So, bullet alpha implies square alpha implies alpha is proven. That's one possible, I don't know. I don't say it's the only one possible way of understanding modally in modal terms, like in sine S4, like in K4, this thing here. But it makes things more complicated. For the moment, I don't need it. Yeah. And also, okay, about Joel's criticism. We don't have a model, a proof, model theory, proof theory, completeness, blah, 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 decidability. We don't have lots of work done it, but I don't have, of course, time to give you a tutorial on this now, right? And I can give you references.
Mhm.
Okay, so non-refutability of G usually is in Morinsky's strategy or in Morinsky's assumption, following an argument by Morinsky, which relies on an additional assumption in his own words. The additional assumption is the following. If I read in modal terms, it's easier. If I prove that phi is provable, then phi is provable. It's kind of the opposite of necessitation rule. It's anti-necessitation rule, which is not a theorem in this KL4, but it is a, how can I say it? Is a acceptor, what is it? Acceptor rules of that a rule that you can add
An acceptable.
acceptable addition of, what is it? Admissible, exactly. It's not admissible. Means it's not, it does not, you cannot prove it, but you can add it to your modal logic. You don't get any internal contradiction. Okay. This assumption allows us to derive the non-refutability of Gödel sense. I mean, the fact that not a negation of G is not provable. Suppose it's provable. Now using again the fixed point theorem, I get G is equivalent to not square G. And the reasoning by contraposition under the premise now consistent bullet G, we obtain square, applying the additional rule, the same additional rule that I had before, blah, blah, blah. And then I derive a contradiction, and then I obtain the proof that
What is the additional rule? I was distracted.
I'm proving this.
The converse of necessity.
Yeah. Using converse of necessitation. Okay. Again, I try to reduce my criticism to only two tools that I need to recover theorem, get a theorem, is contraposition and kind of a reformulation of reduction ad absurdum. Okay, so what I showed up to now, I show you that using these three simple hypotheses, they may be questionable, they may be criticizable, but I recover first to get a theorem in modern terms, as many people do. Now let's go to the second one. The classical statement. Classical statement said the following: let T be classical, really the classical, be any consistent, recursively enumerable formal statement satisfying the Hilbert-Bernays-Loeb derivability conditions, then T does not prove itself is consistent, right? That is, T cannot prove its own consistent. In our setting, the proof relies, I'm simplifying, we have two proofs of the second theorem. I'm showing you one of the simplest proofs, but this one is debatable, really debatable. I have another one, but it's much longer. Just to give an idea, in our setting, the proof relies on a stronger principle, named Loeb's axiom probability logic, adopting the corresponding rule, this R. If I prove that square phi implies phi, then I prove phi. I mean, this is Loeb's axiom in a rule formulation. Same thing, rule formulation. Does the logic now that I will need a stronger logic to get a second. As I told you, the second Gödel's completeness theorem is just, people say it's just a corollary, but it's a harder corollary. It requires, in my formulation at least, requires more resources. Now I need RMBC, I mean, my first is simple but consistent logic, combined with K and this, it's not only K, it's this logic K, with this S4, blah, 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 plus this rule aware, right? Which is slightly stronger than the previous one. So I need to appeal, at least in this proof, to a stronger principle. So consistent in Hilbert, Gentzen, Gödel terms is exactly not to prove bottom, not to prove a contradiction. If a system never proves the contradiction, it's consistent in their terms. In general here, let's just recall, A and not A does not entail B, but A and not A plus duality A entails B, the gentle explosion axiom. Now, suppose that consistent statements are provable. Suppose that, by reduction ad absurdum, suppose that I have a proof that I do not prove inconsistent contradiction. I have a proof that I never prove a bottom. Under the additional crucial premise, and now this formula that Valera did not like, now I have to assume this one. Before, just a couple of formulas were sufficient. Now I have to assume this other one. Then reduction ad absurdum, then here I have not a square bottom, and bottom is square, bullet is square bottom. Then I have the right to derive a bottom, and from this guy here, it follows that, just jumping on the other side, from these two sentences, I have square bottom implies bottom. Applying Loeb's rule, I obtain probability of a bottom. Then reasoning semi-formal way, I prove that I do not prove consistent of my system. Okay. Now, one point here, you may say, you are assuming, as Valera said, you are assuming too much. I'm assuming too much. I'm assuming this thing here. I'm assuming that bullet square bottom. I'm not assuming that square bottom is all behaved. I can prove I can prove the coherence or the regularity of the proof of bottom
But that is you need only for the second theorem.
for second theorem. Right. So again, I recover. Am I in the end of my slides? Yes, I guess so. But just one slide more. So I recover Gödel theorem. So what's the in the end of the day, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to show what is hidden behind the Gödel theorem. At least behind one line of reasoning. Okay? You can completely dismiss Gödel theorem, as Priest says. You can do it. It's just a trick. You don't pay attention to it. It's not going to do any harm in mathematics at all. That's one point of view. I will get an opposite point of view. I'm trying to recover this very important philosophical reasoning behind it and see what I have to suppose, to assume, what assumptions I need to have if my logic is weaker. I could try to do the same with another logic. Let's say Johansson's logic, simplest Johansson logic, which is at the same time intuitionistic and paraconsistent. I could do it, I don't know, but I could try. That's another possibility, another paper, another project, right? So, the conceptual consequence, according to my point of view, Gödel survives even in the most fine-grained logics. My paraconsistent logic, as long as minimal notions of logical consistency are assumed within a linguistic rather than meta-linguistic perspective of consistent. Linguistic why linguistic? Because my bullet, my etc. are objects at the language at the level. It's not meta-linguistic level. They are at the object level. So, and LFIs reveal hidden logical structure and contribute to rendering, I think, Gödel's argument is more universal. Why more universal? Because it holds under other logics and less dependent on non-constructive principle, because I am deleting the law of explosion. Or perhaps more debatable, I don't know, but just offering you these tools, this line of reasoning, which is, I think, one line of reasoning deserving to be examined. That's what MC I'd like to tell you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so since we had a discussion during the talk, maybe we don't have so many questions, but I see Peter, okay, Ben and Marco and Guillaume. Okay, let's start then with Marco. I think it
It's
was
a
the
very,
first one
very
that-
short mark because I was speaking a lot. So can we resume your proposal in this short way that you try to understand what we have to circle in order to get Gödel?
Yeah. What do I have to bulletize? Let's bulletize it. Huh? Can I use this? It's not my language, but do I have the freedom to invent words?
But in fact, what you proved is that it is sufficient to bulletize this of Gödel theorem. You do not prove that it's necessary.
No, I didn't know. No way. It's sufficient. I mean, like most of the theories in mathematics, right?
Okay.
In philosophy, science, whatever. Yeah.
The Ben?
So it sounds like you want to preserve this core intuition that at a certain point, provability just can't keep up. The proof system will fall short, incompleteness sets in, but there's some question about where exactly this occurs. How strong does the system have to be? So can bulletizing shed light on this question? Can we?
Yeah, I guess so. So my idea is keep bulletizing can show you what the minimum amount of things that are sufficient to recover Gödel's, if you want to recover it. So first I have to take a philosophical position. Do I want to, if I accepted that there are paraconsistent logics that are not explosive under contradiction. So first philosophical position, do I need to keep up with Gödel theorem or do I give up? Some people say give up. Apply your little logic, don't worry, be happy, and that's it. No, another position is Let's see what the minimum bulletizing I can do. If bulletizing is one possibility, there may be other kinds of argument. I don't know. I'm offering just one. That's one sufficient to get it. So yes, because it sheds light on the idea that this existential formula is itself may be suspicious. That's why you need to bulletize it. There is a probability of bottom may be suspicious. That's why you bulletize it. And probability of the notion of probability of this G obtained by diagonalization also may be suspicious. That's right. So you bulletize everything. You make a vaccination in everything that may be suspicious, and you get a theory. Right? I don't know if I replied. Did I?
Thank you.
Mike, I saw that you were writing something, but since we don't have access to the chat directly, could you read that out loud? We can hear you if you speak.
Yeah.
Actually, I was engaging in the question that Valeria raised. It was not a question of mine.
Okay, I see. Okay, well, thank you.
Mike is my student.
I see. Thank you, John.
Yeah. So I guess this is going back to a question that was asked before. So if you think about the first Gödel theorem, right? First incompleteness theorem. So there are two things at play. There's like you got two levels, right? There's like you have a formal system that you're talking about, right? And this formal system is a formal system in a particular logic, which is assumed to be classical logic. Right? And then when you prove the theorem, you reason about the formal properties of this system, right? Of this relation. So you think of this relation as just defined by like a string of formula. And so you reason about this string of formula. And there you also use classical logic. Right? Now, one thing that wasn't entirely clear to me about your project is which of these two levels you generalize. Because it seems to me that you're doing both. Right? So you, on the one hand, you want to talk about formal systems in a logic where the background logic is not classical, but is one of these LFIs, right? But also, when we prove the theorem, right, we're reasoning about probability, the consequence relation about this system. You want to do this in an LFI, right? So you want to do this at the meta LFI level. That's why you introduce the sort of like LFI probability logic. Is that correct?
Yeah, in a sense, you say, suppose I try to weaken Gödel theorem using another logic. Suppose I invent that I will be using Lukashevich equivalent logic. Oh, let's say.
Yeah, but from which level?
From this object level. Object. So I'm using Lukashevich equivalent logic. Okay. So I'm trying to redo everything using equivalent logic. But Lukashevich logic do not have this means of bulletizing or talking about. The only logic I know is LFIs. They have a means of talking about to be coherent, to be acceptable, blah blah blah, to behave, to play together negation. So the only logic I know is this kind of logic. Other logics don't have the power, or at least I don't know, or not have not been invented yet. So I've been mixing object level and meta level in a sense. But that's what people do in this kind of proof. This is not the original Gödel's proof. This is a rendering, a model rendering of Gödel by many other authors in this century. Gödel did not use a modal logic. He did not.
Right, but I think so. Maybe unlike other people here, I don't mind having bullet in the language. I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me. But I think what's sort of interesting is that you have in the theorem itself, right? You have these two levels, and generalizing Gödel's theorem can mean three different things. It can mean applying it to more formal systems in which the logic in the system is not classical. It can mean generalizing the meta logic, right? So you're not doing this in classical logic anymore. And it can mean doing both things at the same time. My sense is that actually depending on which of these goals you have, these extra assumptions that you have to use, they may not be needed. I think in particular that if you assume that your reasoning about the consequence relation is still classical, then I don't think you would necessarily need to bulletize because if you would need to bulletize the box formulas, because the probability understood as the existence of a particular kind of string of formulas, right, that counts as a proof, that would be just a classical thing, right? So I think there's maybe a way of also getting a version of Gödel's theorem that holds in this more general setting where your formal system is non-classical, right? It's an LFI, where you don't need any of these assumptions.
No. Okay, let's examine one point. The notion of proof in non-classical logic, is it as acceptable as in classical logic? Is the notion of a probability in intuitionistic logic as acceptable as in classical logic? I guess so. Okay, but in my language, I'm adding this bullet, so I have to be sure that adding this kind of thing, the notion of proof, is going to be acceptable. Good. That's why I need to bulletize. You know, I've been bulletizing myself in a sentences, not myself in sentences, because I have to be sure that I am not inventing any completely crazy alien notion of proof, because I have different objects. I have a weaker negation. I have this negation combined with other connectives, and I have this bullet connective. I have to be sure that I'm not giving something alien. So that's, I mean, of course, I could claim and say, okay, proof is a proof, and I'm not going to say anything about proofs. Even so, I have to say something about my G formulas obtained by diagonalization, because they can be unsure. I don't know. So yeah. Just to be on the safe side. That should be on the safe side.
But I think that's where you could use like a more refined predicate that you're diagonalizing against, so that you get both the Gödel property, right, and also that it's a bullet formula.
Exactly.
I could do. That's what
I think that takes looking into the details.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
That's a good. I could do.
Spencer?
Yeah, I just have a really quick question about something that I wanted confirmation on. When you introduced this theory, I think you called it F, that was based on RMBC and contained piano arithmetic. My worry when seeing something like this is that from the axioms of piano arithmetic, like the induction and such, it will reduce in a way that all of a sudden every formula, that formula is provable. So I just wanted to see, I know we don't really have time to go into the formal system, but if that's a real issue.
Well, it would be an assumption. Suppose you say, okay, I'll take all my formal system F. You're talking about this F, right?
Yeah, or an example, just any example of it.
Okay, you're talking about this. I can say, okay, I will make a more bold supposition. I will say that everything inside of this system is bulletizable.
Well,
okay,
no,
it's an assumption.
You wouldn't have to assume it. You would be able to prove it with the induction. That's what I'm worried about.
I mean, look. The Gödel theorem itself says that no proof is reliable in principle. Or you don't. It's not proven at all. It do not have any proof that all proofs are reliable. So I have to be safe on the safe side. Well, even, I mean, let's go a bit deeper. Even everything I said here can be absurdly crazy because someone will find a contradiction in all possible logic is in category theory one beautiful day, then everything will be destroyed. So I have to survive until that thing, or that theory, or hypercardinals. It's really deep and it's like hypnotical in a sense.
So we know like an example of that where there are formulas that aren't bulletized.
Well, I'm supposing that bulletizing gives me back to classical logic. If I believe in classical logic, I'm okay. If you don't,
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is that are there formulas that, on the assumption that it is bulletized, does everything collapse? Does that force complete explosion? Right? Because what a bullet means is that that formula causes an explosion.
Yeah.
But if you have even one formula that, so what if GF, it turns out, when you turn the crank and build it, it turns out that bullet GF causes global explosion. In that case, you haven't proved anything different than Gödel, because that just means you're simply back to classic. That is,
It's exactly what I
Gödel's
want.
diagonal will produce an explosion for the whole system.
And I think that Spencer's point is that since you already have induction and so much machinery
That might
inside,
very well be
that
true.
this might very well be.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you really have to think about the details of this to be sure that's not happening.
Or you'll never be sure, because, you know,
So what they should not happen?
Well, so we have this process for producing a GF.
yeah, the diagonal process.
Yes. And let's say it's concrete, so we have a real formula, right? Now, it seems to me plausible, because we have a lot of machinery, that bulletizing GF and box GF causes global explosion.
No, I have to think about it.
You know, that might be true.
Why?
So, well, I don't know why, because I don't know the details of this.
My suspicion is that if any
But the formula is produced by very strong machinery, so it might very well do that. That's your point, right?
my suspicion and worry is that if any formula was able to be bulletized, you'd be able to like use a free variable in that formula in induction to show that any other formula could also be bulletized.
But you would have to bulletize everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you
Every
bulletize
formula-
anything, you have
Go
classical
Go back to
logic.
classical logic.
But it's finished.
With respect
No
to that
paper.
formula, it's classic.
Well, it does
That's all it means.
So I think it would all just reduce the class.
Yeah, but the point is that if the thing you produce then causes global explosion, you've lost control.
So
That's
let me see what I understand. Here, if you bulletize anything, you have classical logic. So
No. You bulletize one thing. and
No,
you're
no,
not
okay,
classic.
okay. So you cannot bulletize anything. You have
What do you mean by bulletize?
sorry,
Put the bullet
Yeah, what do
in
you
front
mean?
of it. Bullet.
Yeah, because we mean different things like bulletizing.
put the circle in front.
Okay, that's
Very
technically classical logic. But what gives you classical logic is that every formula is provably equivalent to a bullet formula.
Yes.
That's what you mean. Okay, that's okay.
That's what I know.
Yes.
So you need to not come back to classical logic. You need to accept that some sentences are bulletized, some other are not. Okay, otherwise all become trivial. Now you have an argument that is not constructive for the existence of GF. Okay, now either you transform this non-constructive argument in a constructive argument or not. If you do not transform this constructive argument is a non-constructive argument, you have in principle no reason to believe that these things that you do not know what it is one of those that you bulletize. But if you construct now GF in a constant way, you need to look at the details to think that really you can bulletize it or not. So that seems to me the point.
Yeah.
Because perhaps
we're saying very.
Perhaps if you bulletize, you have a problem.
Yeah.
So either you do not look at what GF is, so why should I bulletize?
Okay.
Supposing that someone should not be bulletized, why it is not
Yes.
not this one?
Yeah.
And if you look at it, are we sure that we can bulletize?
Okay. Oh, look, now we have
This
to.
is the point.
We have to look at the proof of this diagonal lemma and see what the kind of constructive thing I'm using.
Yeah.
Do I like it? Do I accept it?
Yeah.
Okay, or not? So I have to say that's one thing I have to do. I have to look at details. Some mathematical proofs are more constructive than the others, right? So I have to see what the level of the constructiveness is there in this
I
behind
think
the
it's particularly important in the case of Gödel theorem because the point of Gödel was exactly to have as constructive proof as possible.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I have to look at it. I accepted what Ismailian said.
Okay, my dear, thank you very much.
Quote from Avicenna. You know this quote from Avicenna? Ibn Sina.
Yeah.
Do you know this quote?
No.
This is the relevant quote. Ibn Sina said that anyone who denies the law of non-contradiction should be beaten and burned until he admits
That's famous.
that to not be beaten is not the same as to be beaten. That should be burned is not the same as not to be.
Or we should we think magically anyway.